Powerful women don't need more motivation. They need a way that matches their capacity. In this episode, I'm joined by Justina, founder of Valkyrie Solutions and creator of the A-Suite, to redefine what power really means. We unpack inherited beliefs about leadership, success and happiness, and what it takes to unlearn them. We explore leading beyond dominance, protecting joy as a birthright, and claiming self-worth as our greatest currency. If you're ready to challenge the old narratives and examine the way you lead, this conversation is for you. Welcome to You Matter, I Matter, a transformational podcast about reconnecting with what truly matters. I'm your host, James, and each week is an opportunity to explore a little bit deeper who you really are. With amazing guests, we explore topics such as purpose, connection, commitment, and what it really means to live more consciously. If you've been feeling disconnected from yourself, from others, or from life, you're in the right place. Join us on You Matter, I Matter. Now, let's begin. I believe powerful women don't need more motivation. They need room that matches their capacity. The A-Suite is built on the belief that audacity is not arrogance, it's clarity. Good morning, Justina. Can you explain that statement for me?
Yeah, absolutely. And good morning. So the idea that women need to be coached to lead is rooted in the belief that we're supposed to lead in the same way that men lead, but that doesn't necessarily suit our strengths. So we need rooms that allow us to lead from an authentic place, which tends to be more collaborative, or where we lead others to the point where they can lead others, and it becomes like a system-based lifting of everyone in the group.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense because I don't know the differences between men and women, and I think we have different kind of biology, so that's going to create a change in how we respond. And I think that honing down on how each person kind of functions and works is probably the best thing we can do with regards to life, leadership, guidance, authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we are certainly different biologically, this is more from a psychological standpoint. And one of my favorite studies that I reference very heavily in this work that I do is from Rutgers University from 2012, where they interviewed about 370 leadership professionals, equal parts men and women. And they basically asked them to define power. Across the board, men and women alike defined power as dominance and control. That's the definition we've been given. We've been told business is a cutthroat place. There's like an analogy about a dog that I'm not calling to mind right now. But when asked to share when they felt the most powerful and they felt the strongest in their leadership, men still said when they exerted dominance and control, women said they felt the most powerful and authentic in their leadership when they had freedom and when they were collaborating with others. It goes to show that we do lead from different places. And I think a lot of that has to do with nature versus nurture. It has to do with nurture. We, as women, are brought up to nurture, whereas men are often told to shy away from emotion, shy away from nurturing. And so rather than trying to fit the mold of what leadership has looked like in business settings or in any setting for the past century, really, that dominance control, this allows women to figure out what leadership looks like to them, figure out what power looks like to them, and be powerful in their own right.
Yeah. I think generally men for centuries have been in that kind of role as leaders. And I think it's only last 100 years where women have started to come into that leadership role. And so there's always been that idea of control and dominance since, I suppose, whenever man started, really. And that's always been a way in which, I suppose, that's been a way in which they've been shown, or the environment allowed them to be. And I feel like this probably last 20 years has been it's shifting. And I think men as well, on this realization that dominance and control no longer has the same effect it probably did 50 or 60, maybe 100 years ago. And now it comes this idea that leading from the heart, leading from our intuition, being guided by inspired action rather than this kind of idea of we have to do this. So I'll give you an example. One thing I'm trying to do at the moment is to allow myself space so that I can allow my guidance to lead me so I can lead others, rather than allowing my head to try and think, we got to do it this way and do this. And it's hard because you have to surrender to the whole idea of creating that space. But it's a practice. And I think the more that we do that practice, the easier it's going to get.
Yeah. And I love what you just said right there, because that's really everything. It's leading from a place of awareness where you have to be able to separate the thoughts that come to your mind immediately, what we've been trained to regurgitate, to repeat. When that comes to mind, you have to stop and say, is that actually how I really think, how I really feel, and how I want to lead? Or is that what I've been conditioned to or taught to think a leader looks like? And really all of that awareness, being able to separate yourself from your thoughts, requires a lot of introspection, and it requires attunement, not just with your thoughts, but with your emotions as well. It comes from a place of healing, right? Not from a place of this is what I learned to do and this is what we're going to do because that's what I was told to do.
Almost like a place of curiosity.
Exactly.
Becoming
exactly
curious about what's going on. Yeah,
right.
I was just having a cup of coffee a minute ago, and I was just pondering thoughts, what's going on, allowing myself to daydream and allow that daydreaming to create whatever needs to be created with no idea of what's going to come or whether it's going to come. That kind of surrender to it might come, it might not. But I think we're going through this power shift at this moment in time, and the necessarily the rich and the poor, but I feel like there's a shift between people who are heart dominated or leading by the heart, that's a better word to use, people who are very much control, dominant, greed.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're spot on. It's not necessarily so much the rich versus the poor, but there is a point when, that rich level almost eliminate the capacity to be heart-centered, to lead from the heart. But that's exactly right. And we are seeing this shift, which I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, that even men now are starting to step away from the leadership through dominance and control narrative. And I think in the younger generations, for sure, we're seeing that. And it's causing this sort of shift in the paradigm where we're not focused on the bottom line always, because when we focus on our people, they influence the bottom line. And there's ample research to show that when we create an environment where working feels gratifying and satisfying, when we create a space where people are free to be proud of themselves and they're not constantly looking over their shoulders, they perform better. They want to work longer hours. They want to contribute more because it is absolutely a reflection of their integrity, their work ethic, and it's acknowledged from the top down. And we're seeing a shift, not just in revenue generation. And I have a book here with me and I don't have the page tabbed, but research shows that when we lead with more diversity in our organizations, having specifically more women and minorities, not only do we generate more revenue in those businesses, but they have more profit out of that revenue. So it's not just, okay, here's more revenue, but our profit sucks still. It's no, we're also we have a higher profit margin than the dominance and control school of leadership. So inherently, by investing your energy and your resources back into your people, that translates to greater profit for business owners and business operators.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's shifting our perspective on what life is and what abundance is, what money is, because I was taught when I was a child that money doesn't grow on trees. But that's a big belief. That's what my parents had as a belief. And so that belief that money doesn't grow on trees dictates that for years I've been struggling with money. But it also this realization that money is actually energy. And that can be proven through the fact that we now have money online in ones and zeros, and you can create as much money as you want online because it's just ones and zeros. And so there's this idea that we can have as much money or abundance as we want, but it has to come from us first, from the inside out.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I'm similarly working through my own mindset around finances where I feel like I've absolutely operated in poverty mentality for most of my life, because not only was it money doesn't grow on trees, but the love of money is the root of all evil. So I was taught to hate money. And so I'm like naturally just like, if I have money, I'm a terrible person. But you're spot on. And over here in the US, I'm not sure how familiar you are with our economics, but we literally just print money from the Federal Reserve. It's not backed by anything. So when people say it doesn't grow on trees or you have to do so much to earn money, gain money, it's no, you could literally just fabricate it. And if we go to the beginning of economics, the definition is it's based on scarcity, right? And in this world, we don't have scarcity. What we have is greed and hoarding that creates a scarcity. Whereas among people across the globe, we have enough resources to food, clothe, house, heal, educate every single person. But then we have the haves and the have-nots who have created this system where we've assigned a piece of paper or a coin to a value. And we're saying, if you don't have this, then you don't deserve abundance. You don't deserve basic human living, like a good lifestyle. But it's exactly energy. And I think when we shift that mindset to thinking it's not withheld from me, it's something I can pursue, it's something I can create, we get more creative in how we are able to create that. And before having even money, we were bartering, right? We were like, I've got fish, you've got coconuts, cool, let's trade. And we can still do that. But people barter services all the time when they don't have the capital to pay somebody for that service.
Just bringing back that coconut idea, somebody mentioned that cacao used to be a way to barter money, I think. And I'm sure it was cacao. It was used as a form I'm sure it was cacao that was used as a form of money. And it was used obviously in South America and in markets and stuff. But value. The value. You said the value of a person. That's key. It's how do we value ourselves? When I say abundance, I don't necessarily mean just money. It could be what's in our life. It could be relationships. It could be people. It could be anything that we see as valuable in our life, but including ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so there's this idea that we have to start to put value on ourselves. We start to see ourselves as worthy, as valuable, as see self-respect and all that kind of stuff. Because then when we start to create that, we start to create that inner power, that kind of idea that we are that, and we're creating that.
Yeah, definitely. And having a belief in your own worthiness and your own value, I think, is the greatest currency that anyone has. And we've seen that time and time again. If we look at the come up story of a lot of successful people, it wasn't, I started with millions of dollars. It's no, I believed that what I had to offer was of value. And because I believed in that and my value, and because I didn't devalue my time or my energy, I was able to rise to this level that I'm at now. Yeah. And that's something I feel like going off on a tangent, we really need to teach. It's not necessarily like how to be a good worker when you graduate high school or when you graduate college. It's like, how do you value yourself? How do you feel about yourself? Because that's going to be a direct reflection of how you feel about other people. If you don't value yourself, if you can't find value in yourself, you can't find value in others. And that just sets you up for an entire life of failure, not just financially, but being emotionally bankrupt. I feel like it's worse than being financially bankrupt. Yeah, I could go on forever about that.
Justina, where did this all begin? What's your story?
Oh, goodness. That's a great question. So it's been, I want to say, probably 25 years in the making. I'm 36 now, so I guess that started when I was 11, just unlearning some habits and some teachings that I grew up with. I grew up in a very religious household and was taught, again, money. The love of money is the root of all evil. Give of yourself even when you don't have. Just these sort of beliefs that led to me not valuing myself, not valuing my own time, money, and energy. And as I grew up and I had access to new information or new sources of information, I was able to unlearn or start to unlearn some of those teachings and patterns that I had. And then that led me to getting my first corporate job. And I was in a male dominated space. I think I was one of two women in my office. And there was very clearly a distinction between how we valued the input and opinions of women versus men. And it showed me two things working in that company specifically. One, it showed me what it looks like when there are not women or minorities in leadership. It showed me that we end up just recycling the same stale ideas. Innovation is stifled and opinions are not welcome. So there's no room to expand. And that was reflected in the finances. The company, by the time I had joined, was 16 years old, and we couldn't get out of that $2 to $3 million a year revenue rut, right? So it's not a difficult jump to go from 2 to 3 million to 5 to 10 million, but we had been in that $2 to $3 million a year revenue range for probably 5 years. And it wasn't until we brought somebody in who had different opinions, who had, different strategies for how to pursue new work, that things started to shift. Granted, this person was a white male, so it wasn't the physical manifestation of diversity, but there was a diversity of thought. And so we did see that growth within this person's first 2 years or what have you of being there, from going from a $2 to $3 million company to being a $10 million company. So it gave me I got a first row seat to seeing what it looked like when challenging thoughts, pre-existing thoughts and ideas and structures was allowed. But it also gave me space to see how do I want to articulate this? I don't know. I'll have to come back to that one. But there are two verticals that I typically talk about being able to see within this space. And the second one is escaping me right now. But from there, I was able to move into different corporate settings where I saw similar patterns repeated across the board. And what I encountered most often, because I'm a very direct person, I've always been a direct person. I'm less intense than I used to be, but still a bit intense. I never shied away from speaking up in a room. And I would have a lot of women in these spaces come up to me and say, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do what you do. And I was like, you absolutely can. And what that comes down to is knowing what your truth is, right? So it's not a matter of, does this feel like, is this my place to say? If I have information that's going to make this situation better, I'm going to say it, period. If somebody is going to talk down to me because I'm a woman or I'm young, I think that was another thing. I was in my early 20s at that point, and a lot of these folks were 50, 60 years old, and they're like, what does she know? And it's okay, here's my evidence, right? I always showed up with research. I always showed up with a narrative, why this works, who this has worked for in the past. And my opinion started to be accepted, right? Having that be a repeat occurrence, and then simultaneously having women in these spaces say, I wish I could do what you do. I wish I could speak up the way you speak up, led me to creating the A Suite, which is a container for women to unlearn the leadership structures that have been imposed upon them and redefine leadership for themselves. But I also work with victims of domestic and sexual violence, which has given me completely different lens on how to approach things from a trauma-informed space. And that probably contributes to me being less intense, where I do approach things with curiosity now more rather than I'm right, this is my experience and this therefore must be your experience as well. So just a whole collection of different spaces in my life where I found a through line between being a woman and having a voice and brought that into a space to help other women do the same.
A long, kind of very thoughtful journey there. If we go back to when you were younger and when you were at your home and you were in that kind of a religious environment, how did you unlearn those beliefs that you were taught?
It's actually interesting. I was one of 4 kids in a single parent home, and religion was used as a form of punishment. So if we did something wrong and it was in a non-religious, like strictly religious home, I think some of these things wouldn't have been punished at all. We'd be sent to our room to read for the Bible for an hour, right? And in reading the Bible for an hour, I learned quite a bit. And so when my mom would say, oh, like you're supposed to do this, and that's what God says to do. And I'm like, actually, according to James such and such on this verse, it says that you're supposed to do this. And that was the awakening that I had, that this person who's been my source of reality, my whole life. When we grow up as kids, our parents are gods to us. They give us a lens of what reality looks like. When I was able to start learning from the sources that she was citing for her authority, I was able to really see that, okay, what I've been fed is a perversion of what this says. And it led me to grow through curiosity, right? I was confronted quite a few times with things in real life that were the exact opposite of what I'd been told growing up. One of them that comes to mind is being able to be a Christian and be homosexual. I grew up believing that's not possible. You cannot be both. And then when I was in college, I was part of the Christian ministry on my campus. And one of the people on the ministry team there, who was a good friend of mine, he was the most devout of all of us. Junior year of college, he came out. And I was like, oh my God, like this completely upsets everything that I believed about being gay and being Christian, because he didn't leave the faith. He stayed in the faith and he created space for himself. And there was a realization of, like, I've been trying for years to pray the gay away, if you will. He met with priests every week to have these conversations. And finally, he came to the realization that God created me the same way that he created everybody else. And if God is flawless, if he's infallible, then how could he make something fallible? How was this an accident? How is this? There's something to be ashamed of. And it really turned my whole belief system on its head. And it was more experiences like this that helped me peel back those layers of indoctrination, if you will, of some of those messages that I had learned and received as a kid.
Yeah, that's so often we are told as a child. If you take, for example, the school system, and I was going to come back to the school system as well. Let's do it now thing, and how in the school system we are. Well, I'll give you an example. I learn best by actually doing things rather than reading or writing. Whereas in schools, they tend to read or write. So I would struggle in school and then I'll get told I'm dumb or other things. But it's this realization that I'm not dumb at all. It's just that I function better when I learn how I best learn. And yeah, when it comes to value and learning to value ourselves, we aren't actually shown how. And I think it's because I don't think the teachers know how to value themselves.
Yeah, it's a very new idea, I think, that people are embracing to value ourselves. And because of that, we haven't taught it. I don't know what generation you are, but I'm a latter side of the millennial. It's new for us. It's something we're embracing, and we're seeing the next iteration of kids, the next generations of children embracing it even more. And I think that's why we're seeing such a huge shift in it, like the social tolerance, and not just tolerance, but acceptance. But I'm really glad you shared that example about feeling like you were dumb. I resonate with that so much. My siblings are all really smart, and I didn't learn until I was 32 that I have ADHD, and I didn't know that until I treated my anxiety. And once the anxiety was treated, I realized the anxiety was keeping my ADHD in check. And now I just go around bumping into walls constantly. It's amazing. But I felt the same way. I very much, English class in high school, I hated it. I hated it because I felt like I never got anything from the content. I could read through a book and not retain anything because my eyes were doing the work, but my mind wasn't retaining it because I could zone out and think about a million other things. And so what I learned and what I absorbed was that I was not smart. I was not the smart sibling. I was the dumb one. And I had some reinforcements of that from some of my older siblings because we tease each other. But it wasn't until I was in college and I repeating the same behavior of like in my dumb student mentality of, oh, I'm not going to read the assigned reading and I'm going to show up and there's a pop quiz. And I did this a couple different times and failed the pop quizzes. And then there was a note on one of them where my professor wrote, "You're too smart to be getting grades like this." And I'm like, he thinks I'm smart. Like something I'm doing must, the way I'm thinking must be working. And in the same course, we had a written midterm. And I remember coming out of the midterm feeling like that was a breeze, that was easy. And having somebody else come out and be like, oh my God, like that was miserable. That was really difficult. And it gave me space to think, oh, just because I don't think like everybody else, or I didn't perform well on standardized tests, doesn't mean I'm not smart. It just means that I think differently and then my output shows up differently. And in a lot of ways, that's a strength. In my adulthood, that has been a strength.
I mean, going back to the value thing, and I'm sure, because I used to be forced to go to church when I was younger. And I think as soon as I got to 18, I was like, nah, I'm all right, kid. But I was forced to go to Sunday school and stuff. And I'm sure Jesus said many occasions that we are perfect. We are valuable. We are worthy. And yet we get told by people higher up that we're not. And it's almost like if in schools, like you said, if you were told you were clever, if you were told you were worthy, you were good enough, you are amazing, and everybody was told that regardless of how they performed in school, I think you would put the output of the school would go through the roof.
Yeah, definitely. And to your point of the teachings, at least of Jesus, speaking about love and compassion and embracing the failures. And Zacchaeus, the tax collector, he went and he ate with him. He ate with prostitutes. He ate with the people who are considered the scum of society. And that gave them a sense of worthiness. And your point about higher up saying that you're not worthy, I remember writing in my journal, being in like high school, middle school, and just, I found it recently and was reading it, and it was just full of self-loathing. Like I hated myself. And it was like this church-imposed depression because I wasn't worthy. And here's this omnipotent being who's supposed to love me despite me not being worthy. But I can't feel that. I can't receive that because I don't believe I'm worthy. It 100% translates into different environments. And then again, to your point, like meeting kids where they are and learning to teach to their needs rather than teach to a standardized test or teach to an outcome we would have a dramatically different society. I believe that the current school structure is intended to produce workers. When they come out, they're ready to work. They're ready to be law-abiding citizens. They're ready to conform to whatever society is. And we don't need more conformity. Like our society, especially in the US now, I don't know if you're following any of that. It's hard not to, but there's a lot going on and a lot of division, and all of these people, my generation, earlier generations, and even later ones, were having trouble finding work. So we did what we were told we should do. And now we're not finding jobs because the people who are at the top who told us to behave like this are getting greedier, and they don't want to pay for us to be who they told us to be. Completely agree. One of the things that I want to do is part of my program, the A Suite, is take that to colleges and universities and inspire and encourage people to be entrepreneurs, because we don't need more people following a path that's already been paved and repaved and repaved. We need innovation. And there's a study, I want to say back in like 2021 or 22, it said that 80% of the jobs that Gen Z and Gen Alpha will have in their adult lives don't exist today. They have yet to be created. And we need to fuel that creativity. We need to enable people to explore and innovate. And they can't do that if they don't believe in themselves. If they say, oh, this idea isn't worth saying out loud, it's never going to be said out loud. It's never going to transform into a pursuit or a company or a new product or whatever.
As it brings back to the idea you're talking about, curiosity, and how we need to become curious of what people tell us. So we need to ask ourselves, is that really true?
Mm-hmm.
And then find the evidence to counteract that kind of thing. I think a great example I can think of for myself is just through the power of thought. I remember looking for a house, and I came into this house and I knew this would be my house. And I just kept it in my mind, that's going to be mine. Even though it fell through twice and took 9 months, I eventually got there, and here we are. And that's just the power of using our mind. That's just one tiny sliver of what we're capable of. And when it comes to the beliefs, we need to start to challenge those beliefs. And I don't mean, okay, you've done something wrong, challenge that, and you did physically do something wrong. Don't challenge that. What I mean is things like when somebody gets told you're stupid, challenge things like that, or you're not worthy to do that, challenge something like that. And I think that's such a key thing.
Right. Challenge the people, or even if it's like a nonverbal cue, you don't belong here. Your voice isn't accepted here. Your skin color, your behavior, it's not accepted here. And the idea of it just being a shift of mindset is really powerful. And I recently purchased my first home, and that was something that I never, ever thought I'd be able to do again, growing up. Or it was very much, I'm going to live in apartments for the rest of my life. They might be nice. They probably won't be nice, but that's my lot in life. That's what I'm going to do. And all that ever ends up being is there's a process that you don't know how to follow. If you look for that process and you follow it and you tailor it to what you want and what you need, you'll get there. And having purchased my house, just being able to do that opened my mind to other things. It's okay, I purchased this house, and now like here's other things I want to do with real estate. But I wonder how much an island costs. I remember looking up, because I heard Jay-Z bought an island or something ridiculous like that. There's islands you can purchase that are less than the cost of a house. And so here's 11-year-old me in the back of my mind. You can't buy a house. And now I'm in my mid-30s, and it's okay. No, I can buy an island with a house on it, probably for not much more than I just bought my house for. So it's just a shift in mentality. And I think paired with curiosity that really allows us to be more than we ever imagined we could be. And that mindset shift is so important. We have to stop telling ourselves what other people have told us. We have to stop reinforcing the beliefs that we're not enough, we don't belong, we're not worthy, and start challenging them internally so that we can be curious about new endeavors and new opportunities for us.
Got a podcast called something to do with happiness. What's it called, the podcast?
Happy is Normal.
Happy is Normal, that's the one. What was the inspiration between that and how did you get started?
It's based on this idea that I had when I was probably at the height of experiencing anxiety and depression. And it took me so long to get treatment for it because another layer of that sort of like religious conditioning was that depression and anxiety aren't real. I'm not depressed. I have a demon of depression, and I have that demon because I did something against God and God's punishing me for it, which biblically is not accurate. But that was something that I was really able to shake. That wasn't one of those ideas that I was able to push away until much later in life. And when I finally got treatment for it, I remember it was the height of pandemic. I was trying to find a therapist because I was very much tentative about medication. And I remember just filling form after form out for intake and just getting messages back, hey, we don't have anyone here who's equipped to treat you. Great. This is absolutely wonderful. So I ended up just caving and saying, I need something to get me out of this because it's crippling. Like I remember there was one night where I had a dream that I was having a panic attack, and I woke up gasping for air, like woke up struggling to breathe. And it was in this sort of moment, I was like, something's got to give. So I worked with my primary care physician, and it took about 6 months to find the right balance of medication. But I remember waking up one morning with a smile on my face, whereas I would wake up in the middle of the night or in the morning and I would, like, my eyebrows would be furrowed, my jaw would be clenched. I just was already tense. I was waking up from a night of rest. So clearly it wasn't a good night of rest. And I remember just sitting at my countertop in my kitchen and being like, is this what other people feel like? is this feeling of happy, is it normal? Is this something that other people have? And that became a song. I wrote a song about it. I'm a singer-songwriter. And through that song, it was like I started being again curious about what this looks like in the world and researching it and going down different paths of healing to figure out why I ever felt happy was not normal. And that translated to, so like a book that I'm working on, same title. And then I wanted to get other people's perspectives on it, because when I share this with people, I have yet to find somebody who can't resonate. And maybe that's because most of the people that are in my life are creatives, and we all have this similar plight of like, we create out of a need to express what maybe is difficult to express through speaking. And everyone resonates with the idea that, is happy normal? Is it for me? Is that something that I can have? And so in the podcast, we explore happiness as a birthright rather than something that you have to earn through suffering, which is a belief that I held for a really long time. So that's a really long way to share how that came about.
Yeah, I think just covering happiness a little bit here now. I think I must admit I had quite a good childhood when growing up and stuff. Been on a farm, freedom, but underneath all that, there was needs that I didn't quite get, and so that created a lot of anxiety, depression, anxiousness, feeling rejected, that kind of thing. And yeah, I think happiness it's not taught. We're not taught to see happiness. We're not taught, we don't see, I think quite often, very rarely do you see a very happy person running around. And so it almost becomes second nature that happiness is something that we have to strive for, rather than happiness is something that we can have right now.
Yeah. So two things. The first is, I want to ask you, do you remember the first time that you doubted yourself?
Oh, I do. No.
No. Okay. So a big part of my thought behind happiness being normal is that when we're kids, we're not burdened. We don't come out of the womb burdened with like the weight of the economy and society. And we don't know to hate ourselves, to disparage ourselves, to think we're dumb, to think we're ugly or fat or nobody loves us. We're not taught that at that point. What we learn later in life are those things. And then they're put on us, and we choose unconsciously to carry them around with us for the rest of our lives until we realize, like, this is not normal. These don't belong to me. These are not for me. And then, oh gosh, there was something else you said, and I forgot the point that I wanted to make on that. What was the last thing you said, James?
We're not taught how to be happy, and that we don't see happy people around us generally. And so that kind of this idea that we have to be stern, we have to not look happy. If we look happy, people are going to think we're strange. We're out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so that was the other half of it. And I think I just folded it into my question about when you first experienced self-doubt. You're right, we're not taught to be happy. But in my thinking here is, we're taught to be unhappy. I don't think we're taught to be happy because that's supposed to be how we live. That's a birthright. That's something that is innate for us as humans. We don't come out of the womb again crying. We come out crying for sure, but we don't come out sad, right? When we cry, it's because we want something, and then we learn, are we going to get our needs met or not? And that's when the conditioning begins. But our natural state of being is not to be unhappy. Those are things that are imposed on us. And to your point, we all end up being adults that are like, we look miserable. Nobody's smiling at each other. The other side of that is when we start unburdening ourselves. Like me going through this journey, I find myself just walking around smiling, which is not something I could say for myself. Even, how old am I? 4 years ago, I couldn't say that about myself. And that was just my life, probably since I was 11, I want to say. I do remember the first time I felt doubt about myself. And I remember times after that where I can see that those interactions shape how I think about myself today. And by being able to point to those, I'm able to reverse engineer the negative self criticisms that I've been carrying with me and then just unscrew them and throw them away. Yeah. Yeah. It's a process for sure. And it takes intention. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about being aware of the thoughts that we have. Not only do we have to be aware of them, we have to be able to say, this is for me and this is not for me. We have to be able to discern what we actually feel about ourselves versus what is our subconscious mind resurfacing from somebody else that we don't want to hold as a truth.
Yeah, I was thinking, what is other people's, what is actually mine?
Yeah.
That's key. But I think there's never been a time when we can actually change that. Because now that we know and are starting to embrace being, say, for example, you are practicing being a happy person every day. You're happy, you're practicing happiness when you go out, when you drive the car, when you go on walks, when you go to work. Now, as an adult, when we start to have our own kids, we can start to teach them deliberately how to harness happiness in a way that we as how we didn't.
Yeah. And so in my mind, it's more of a protection of the happiness that's already there. So I don't have any kids, but I have nieces and I work with them on speaking positively to themselves and being able to say things kindly with them. They both have learning disabilities. One of them, I think, is dyslexic. They both have ADHD. And I'd have them for the summers and we'd be going through their alphabet and their math and they would get so frustrated. But they also had this belief where one of them was like, oh, I'm good at reading, but I'm not good at math because my sister's good at math. Just because she's good doesn't mean you're bad. Just because she's faster at it doesn't mean you're bad at it. So it took a lot of seeing how that doubt showed up for them. And they were like 6, 7 years old at the time. So that's how early it's infiltrating our minds. It took seeing that to have to shape some sort of mechanism to protect them from that belief and give them space to be proud of themselves, where it was like at the end of like, we just finished this whole package of words that are advanced. They're supposed to be for next year, not for this year, but we're practicing them now so you get better. And it's like, high five, you crushed it. You're amazing, right? Being able to reinforce that rather than, okay, you did it. Good, let's move on. It's not just accomplish and move on. It's no, celebrate. You just did something that you weren't able to do yesterday. But to me, it's more of a protection of the happiness that they have, right? Before they started going to school, they never had to think about being smart or dumb or anything like that. And now it's this measurement of, can you read these words? Can you do these numbers? You're not at the average mark for kids your age, or you're above or you're below. And it's just, we're already measuring humans at the age of 6 and assigning to them an identity. You're good at this, you're bad at that. And we're so impressionable at that age. Our mind's the most malleable between, I find new research is out that says like babies, because their mind is basically mush at that point, they're able to learn the most because they have so much space. But we are the most malleable from the time we're able to talk to, I think, about the age of 13, right? And that's because we start absorbing these patterns and we start shaping the way we see ourselves. So we pursue certain information and avoid other information. But if we are able to teach kids to protect their happiness, to protect their sense of self-worth, then whatever's thrown at them down the line it's going to fall right off. And I don't know, that's a hill I'm willing to die on for sure.
It brings the idea of sports day and how you have the kids that win and then you have the kids that lose. But if we were able to reinforce that kids, you might have lost now, let's go away and do this, and help them to see loss as a stepping stone rather than some kids say you are a loser kind of thing. See them as stepping stones, and you can improve this through doing that and that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, I think, a way of shifting a belief about failure. A lot of people see failure as incidental, right? These are things that happen multiple times. If we shift our thinking about failure, like losing a game, for example, if we say that was a failure, you failed. No, we didn't win that sort of contained evaluation of our skill and ability, but we have new information that we can take to the next one. We have ways of seeing how we can do better and be better. And you only fail when you quit, right? You can always get better unless you quit. So if we shift that perspective, even on failure, it's not about you lost, you won, it's cool. Like, you didn't get it this time. That doesn't mean you're a failure forever. This is not your new identity. This is not a prediction of how you're going to do the next several games. But we do predict that. We do predict that we make projections on based on how they're doing today. They're not going to do well here and here. And then we project onto the winners based on how they're doing here. They're going to win here and here. And those mindsets heavily dictate future performance. If we just removed those and said, hey, now you have new information, let's work around that. Let's build something to combat those weaknesses, or let's enhance our strengths, because maybe these strengths are where our opponents are weak, right? It really is just about reframing the way we see things. I mean, it's always so binary. You've got 0, 1, you've got lost, you've got win, you've got black, you've got white, pretty, ugly, smart, dumb. No, there's so much in between. There's so much more in between that is more valuable than those two far ends of the spectrum that we allow people to see themselves in.
Yeah, 100%. Justina, can you tell us, what is it that you do and how can people get in contact?
Yeah, absolutely. I am the owner of a company called Valkyrie Solutions. I work with women and minority-owned small businesses to help them grow their businesses, specifically within government contracting. But I also work in leadership development. The A Suite that I mentioned a few times earlier is one of my flagship containers that can be found on my website. The website is valkyrieus.com, and it's just the A Suite after that. And then my contact information is jj@valkyrieus.com.
We'll add them to the show notes at the end. Awesome. Thank you very much. It's been a very insightful conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening. If something in today's conversation resonated, take a moment to sit with it. And if you feel called, share this episode with someone who might need it too. You Matter, I Matter is a growing space. And if you'd like to stay connected, you're welcome to follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps this work to reach people it's meant for. These conversations matter. You matter, I matter. Until next time, take care of yourself and the relationships in your life.